name is Matthew Kroll.
Hey, bro. My name is Shahir Dowd.
What Raggy? And this is the only podcast about movies, specifically Flow.
Imagine if Scooby-Doo was on the boat.
Oh my God, that would have changed things.
But it would be so sad because Shaggy wouldn't be around and Scooby-Doo would be a very, very sad little boy. I find I laugh a lot like Scooby-Doo.
You do in your regular life?
In my regular life, like whenever like something funny happens that is a dad joke moment where it's like, this isn't really funny, but I'm like,
yeah. No, that checks out.
Yeah.
Shahir, we're finally doing it.
We're finally doing it. I feel I'm actually going to struggle through this a little bit.
Struggle bus it.
What?
Struggle bus it.
Struggle bus it.
Yeah.
What's that?
You're on the struggle bus. You're struggle busing it.
I'm struggle busing. I've never heard that phrase before until this moment. And I'm processing it in real time. But I saw this movie actually probably a good month and a half ago. And I wanted to go see it again. I haven't gone to see it again, but I've talked endlessly about this movie since having seen it. In fact, at your party just a few nights ago, I remember telling 3 or 4 people, you got to go see this movie. So I'm excited we're going to do it. I'm struggling a little bit because I'm like, I like to have the little details in my head when we go into it, but I can tell you about the macro of this movie as we discuss it.
Well, I'm going to guide your struggle bus all the way through this because I saw this on Monday.
Okay, and it is now Thursday.
It is now Thursday. Okay. I went at a cool 4 p.m.
What a life you lead.
And through different machinations I can't really talk about. Randomly afterward, I ended up at 11 Madison Park.
How was that?
I did not plan for that, and yet there I was.
And they have gone vegan, right?
They did, yeah.
They've gone entirely.
It's good.
So for those who don't know, 11 Madison Park is a gastromolecular restaurant, or famous for its gastromolecular, I forget the phrase, but
really good cooking.
Yeah, deconstructed food, or they were well known for it. And recently they made headline. Famously, one of the greatest restaurants in America, I think, or
3 Michelin star,
or possibly the world. And recently they made headlines because they've turned their entire menu into a vegan restaurant.
It's great.
It's also extraordinarily expensive.
Right.
Yeah. So tell us the story of, and I'm very glad that you went there and you didn't eat like
no animals.
No,
there's no real story. I didn't want to do it. I'm saying my night from flow to that, it flowed very interestingly, but it was one of those, here's why I bring it up. It was one of those days where sort of like when you're working in the beginning of it, everything's kind of going wrong and the flow state of your mind is like really cracking.
Yeah.
And when you're out in the city and you have a task, I'm going to see the movie, right? And you get a text that sort of can change the trajectory of your entire evening. I had to go home and work. Like I really had to go back and do it, but I chose not to. And it kind of hurt me later down the week and whatever. But like the reason I bring it up, Flow is a movie, in my opinion, that has a lot to say about a lot of different things, but it had a real stark seizing opportunity in the moment when you do it for better or worse. Like there's a lot of like there's no humans.
Was there a flood in Manhattan that I didn't know about?
No. But like everything that happens to the animals in Flow, there's no humans in animals. There's no humans in animals. Wow, it is late. There's no humans in Flow.
Yeah.
But they are presented with like basically almost to the point many times like binary choices as to how to move forward in a world that's just sort of flowing and moving around them, both figuratively and literally. And they, for better or worse, like just have to keep making them and life keeps coming at them and coming at them. And I don't know, I for whatever reason, I linked the entirety of my day and how it didn't go the way I thought it would to the experience. Here's the problem. We don't have names for the characters of the animals in Flow.
Right.
So,
and in fact, I have not looked up the IMDb for Flow.
There is no cast.
There's no cast of Flow, right? There is just sound.
I don't know how to handle it.
Okay, tell us what Flow. I have so many questions, mainly to do with like what you ate at 11 Madison.
We can talk about that after.
And also like the thing about 11 Madison, the kind of curated meal you had, is that the idea there is that the chef is telling you a story through the food, and I wondered what that story was. But you're right. That probably is a discussion to be tabled at another time.
No.
Tell us what Flow is about.
Flow, as the Internet Movie Database states, is, quote, a cat is a solitary animal, but as its home is devastated by a great flood, he finds refuge on a boat populated by various species and will have to team up with them despite their differences. This is the second movie where a bunch of animals have had to team up despite their differences.
What was the other one?
You know it. You got what else? Like in the last month we've done.
I'm honestly so tired. I'm blanking.
The Wild Robot.
Oh, the Wild Robot. Yes, of course, the Wild Robot. I was like, Robot Dreams? Did
they kind of do.
Did a bunch of animals team up? I couldn't even remember.
Yeah.
I'm very, very tired right now. Yes, and this was my pitch to you and to several people I have talked to about when having seen this movie. I think I've said this to you as well. I went on at the time that I went and saw this movie, it was only playing at the Angelica Theater in New York, which if you lived in New York City, you know it's this like little movie theater down on the tip of the division between Soho and NoHo, south of Houston and north of Houston. It is kind of the classy old, well, not classy, but the old movie theater that plays all the indie hits. From memory, there's one movie theater down at the bottom of that theater that has like a pole in the middle of it, and you've got to choose your seating very carefully.
You can hear the subway.
You can also hear the subway going through there. But that was the only movie theater that was playing this. And so I took my son, my wife, and another family who were friends of ours also went as well. Now, my son, this was the thing. Well, my son is going through a phase where like anything I recommend him is not a good movie.
It's not cool, Dad.
Yeah, it's not cool. Yeah, he's not into it. Everything is sus. There's no skibbity riz in Ohio. But so he was sort of like, it was okay, but I didn't like it because there was a cat in danger in that movie, and and that was his thing, and he sort of didn't think about it too much after that. When I came out of the movie and the other parents asked me what I thought about it, I said this, I believe it. I said it at the time. I've said it to many people since then. I was like, there was a few moments during this movie when I was watching it, I was like, this might be one of the greatest movies ever made. Full stop, period. No question marks needed on that statement. This is genuinely a movie that I felt as I was watching it could be one of the greatest movies ever made. And I felt so strongly about that. That's why I was badgering you to go see this, because also
there's no badgers in this movie.
You own a black cat. Whom I have looked after before. And so I thought that it might resonate with you in that. I'm worried that the amount of people I've told that to might be overstating the movie or overselling it, but I genuinely was moved in so much as there's not many other movies like this, that you can watch right now. There's not many other movies that combine an almost video game aesthetic with a sort of philosophical story about humanity. Well, about the nature of life.
Mm-hmm.
It made me think of another profound movie moment that I experienced that I had, which was a film, by Kim Ki-duk, the Korean author who I think has passed away, called Spring, Summer, Winter, Fall. I forget the order, and Spring again. But that was a movie that was entirely transcendent.
Sure.
And one where I was like, this is the reason why humanity should make movies.
Right.
And that was the feeling I had when I watched Flow. I feel like that is overstating it, but I felt very compelled by that idea.
I don't think it is. I think the movie itself is experiential in a way that often, this is going to sound weird on the movie podcast, but that movies sometimes cannot be. Like there is somehow, because of the art style and the way that it is presented, a very video game-like quality to it.
The game Journey comes to mind.
Yep, Journey is a huge thing. Also,
Stray.
Well, Stray, not really Stray, to be perfectly honest. Like they both have cats in it, but like I don't think the tone or the vibe is the same. There's a studio, Nomada. They have some stuff published by Devolver Digital and some other places that made a game called Grease.
Okay.
It's their Spanish studio, and they just released a game called Neva. I've played Grease. I haven't played Neva. And these games are like, I think along sort of with Journey and your thing, and even a little bit like Mist and Riven in an odd way.
The other game was Inside.
Yeah, Inside.
Yeah.
Yep. Like it has this
sort of mystical quality.
It's a mystical quality in a realistic world, and that's a very difficult knife's edge to balance on. And I think that when dealing with films that don't have dialogue and are dealing with characters that are animals, you sometimes fall into a lot of different traps. I'd say most times movies fall into a bunch of different traps. Again, this is not, I want to compare this to other movies like that, but like, let's even say like Wild Robots animals are animals, but they're humans. They're humans.
They're stand-ins for humans.
In this, the animals, everything that an animal does, with possibly the exception of those the crane birds, which were a little bit alien to begin with, or a little bit otherworldly. Every action could be considered animal action and not character action, with the exception of the very end with the boat in the tree, which we'll get to.
Yeah.
But I feel like at that point in the film, it is earned. And I can't believe it felt like this movie on paper did a bunch of stuff that pisses me off in movies.
Okay.
But did it so well and ran the entire thing on expert mode and just hooked you and took you on a ride that was like nothing I'd ever seen before. Man, I love it. When I see stuff, I'm like, well, or I hear stuff or read it, I'm like, well, I'm not going to like that. And then I see it and I'm like, oh God, this is the best.
Yeah.
Like it quadruples my respect for it, because it's going against my grain and not only telling me to shut the fuck up, but showing me how wrong I was about a thing. And the way that this movie, okay, let's even start in the beginning.
Okay.
I don't have a lot of red flags when it comes to films. Like we've done over 500 of these things. I don't think I've ever brought up a thing in a movie where I'm like, I'm not going to watch them. No,
right,
like whatever. Yeah. Animal endangerment and or cruelty might be the closest thing that I have. And this is an animated film, so we're not seeing, it's not like there's a bunch of like gore or anything. No
animals were harmed in the making of this movie. Yeah.
But this movie is so excellent at its emotional resonance that the endangerment feels very real. And it's a quadruply scary because the main thing about what's causing all of the endangerment is what seems like a global flood. In a world that did have humans at some point, but we're not sure how far back that was, because there are houses and cities and statues.
Yeah, mainly of cats.
Statues of cats, and then there's human statues too. They float through. They float through a statuary thing. Yeah.
That looked a lot like Malaysia. We should state that this is a Latvian film by Gints Zilbalodis. I'm going to horribly pronounce that. And it was nominated for, I believe it's being kind of positioned as a Best Animated Feature nominee for the 2025 Academy Awards.
If it's not, there's a problem.
Yeah, but I think maybe the conversation should be Best Picture, not Best Animated Picture.
I mean, it could be.
Yeah.
I mean,
anyway, regardless.
Yeah. So it, even though it had those moments, it still had me completely on board with like the beautiful world and the way it was set up and the way that the animals were actually animals and they kept it going. There are some fantastical things that do happen, mainly with the stork and the
crane.
I couldn't tell. This is me not knowing enough about zoology. I should ask Patch from Tier Zoo. But like, is that an actual type of bird, or is that an invented bird for this space? Because the thing that the other sort of more fantastical creature, I think, or maybe like proto creature, was the giant whale.
Yes, which didn't look like a
normal earth whale.
It had some other design qualities to that whale that made it feel more like it would feel more at home in the Avatar movies.
Yeah. I did think about that whale that cut off that whaler's hand.
Yeah.
But the machination of this movie, and it always sort of flows and moves forward, is the earth is flooding, and this cat finds essentially a sailboat as its home is being flooded, and like it's just an empty sailboat with a capybara in it.
Yeah.
And then joins the capybara in this boat. It's just flowing, like the boat's just going in whatever direction that the sail is going. And then there's a dog character that the cat kind of knew from before. And then there's a lemur?
I'm not sure what the monkey is, but yeah, some kind of lemur.
Who's like kind of obsessed with little treasure things. And it's these. And then finally there's this crane stork type bird that knows weirdly how to steer the boat. Or actually, this is what I like about it. You're never quite sure if it knows how to steer the boat or it just likes resting its foot on the like, what's that thing on a boat that turns the boat? Wow. It's late.
It is late.
What is the thing on the boat that turns the boat?
The boat turny thing.
God damn it.
The steer? I don't know. The oar? I don't know. Yeah, you're right. There are fantastical things in this.
Rudder.
The rudder.
Fuck me.
And what was the thing that they're floating in again? It's called a boat.
Bus.
A bus.
Struggle bus. We're struggle busing. We brought it around.
Yeah, there's a quality to this, which is that it is sort of like both. The book that I read to try and find the language to think about this was Paul Schrader's book, Transcendentalism, the Transcendentalist Style, and Transcendentalism in Film. It didn't actually give me, I think, quite the right language for what this film was, because he was specifically talking about like Yosujiro Ozu and other filmmakers like him. But he, in the intro to the updated version, he referenced a couple other movies that really spoke to me when I was thinking about it. One was a movie called Le Quattro Volte, which came out many years ago, an Italian movie where a man dies at the beginning, and then the film essentially sees that person's spirit being reincarnated in 4 different ways. And the first is reincarnated as a goat. And then the movie is like following the life of this goat. And it has this extraordinary one-take sequence in it where this goat has to run backwards and forwards. And I remember the movie, it's like a 4-minute take.
Sure.
And I think the film kind of like follows this idea of like animal and mineral, and like human and animal and mineral, and it like basically you what you have to infer is that the spirit is being reincarnated into these different characters. At one point, the main character is a tree in that movie, and again, the thing that I was thinking about with Paul Schrader's book, Paul Schrader is of course the famous writer of Taxi Driver and many other films, and director of many films. I was thinking about transcendentalism because I was thinking about that. The quality of this movie, which is that it becomes so much more than the experience, than the actual dimensions that you're watching it as. And there's a quote in the Paul Schrader book. I'm remembering off the top of my head. I don't have it in front of me. But something to do with like transcendentalism is the closest that we can. It has a quality of being akin to the language of religion, but not necessarily about religion, but has that sort of dimension to it. And I think, for me, this film had that quality, despite the fact that it's not quite in the sort of transcendentalist style that Schrader is referring to in that book. But it has that quality that, like Kim Ki-duk's film, Spring, Summer, Winter, Spring, and Spring Again, Fall and Winter, Spring Again, where the experience of watching it is almost akin to a religious experience. And again, I'm not a religious person, so
sure.
I'm not ascribing it to being anything to do with scripture or anything like that. But it has this sort of like grander quality to it. In so much as to borrow from, I think, Network, the movie Network, Paddy Chayefsky's film, written script, the sort of primordial forces of the world are at play in this movie. And it is about the nature of not humanity, but creatures and their environment. And in a way that speaks to the sort of grander sense of like, who are we? And what is this world?
Sure.
And how do things operate? And how is it that we live and exist here? And what is our purpose? Because what is oddly beautiful about this, and again, why I'm sort of thinking about it as potentially one of the greatest movies ever made, and with no hyperbole when I say that, is that this silent movie, ostensibly silent movie where no characters speak and characters are entirely divided by language, gives me more insight to humanity than I think most films ever will. And that's because these characters, these animals are confronted with like the basic problems of humanity at a primal level,
sure.
Which is like their environment has turned against them. And therefore they have to swim like Noah's Ark, get aboard this boat that there is no destination for. And they are characters who, like the Tower of Babel, have no ability to communicate with each other than their gestures.
Yeah.
And in fact, their understanding of the world is very different to one another. You mentioned the lemur before, who is fascinated by trinkets. And I thought about the idea that the lemur is almost like this capitalist who finds value in objects that have no value anymore,
Sure.
but like creates value in them.
He's slinging NFTs is what you're saying.
Yeah, he's a crypto bro.
Yeah.
And it's what's fascinating about that is then the film with no dialogue, with no explanation, as you watch it, like gives you these incredible moments. So there's a moment, there's a major moment that I want to talk about that I'll say for spoilers, but there's a moment where the lemur loses one of its trinkets. And I gasped.
Well, because it was a big deal.
It was a huge deal because you knew, and the characters who don't have a collective language, you could see that they all turned to each other and were like, "Oh my God, this is the worst thing that's going to happen to this person or to this lemur." Yeah. And it's like because it has invented this value, and I just found the fact that this film did all of that in silence, with no human beings,
right, was
so powerful and so like. Incredible to witness. And I was really genuinely struck by that.
I hear that. I'm sorry if I look a little distracted, Shahir, but right now there was a meeting of an animals, the dog and a cat peering through at each other through a door with no words, just emotions. And I have to imagine if Zoe and Laszlo were stuck on a boat together, fuck, that boat is done. That boat is done. There is no way that they would ever make it. Bye. Zoe
but
just
I
left.
wonder, like, again, I have sold the movie so many times in the last like 3 or 4 weeks because of that feeling I had watching it. I wonder, did that resonate?
Laszlo just opened the door again. Yeah, so maybe they would survive. Hey, listen, I think this movie, it absolutely does resonate. I think it works on a lot of different levels. You can read it in a lot of that, like, well, what is the animal representing? Obviously, the lemur could be seen as a capitalist or a crypto bro. But it's funny, the way that we assign human traits to animals is based on a lot of how animals interact with humans. I think I brought up maybe 2 weeks ago that we're starting work on, it won't be out for a very long time, but what is essentially 3 episodes of our history show just on the history of cats. And how we domesticated them roughly 9,000 years ago. And that's pretty early on the domestication scale.
Yeah.
But relationships with cats throughout history, whether they're positive, like in ancient Egypt or in the Arabic world or in Japan and China, though there's a couple things that's sort of 50-50 there, or awful in the European world with the witch hunts and a lot of abuses of the animal, treating them no better than the vermin that they used to kill. It's all based on how they interact with humans.
Yeah.
And so therefore the way that we interpret what a cat does is still tainted through sort of like a human lens.
Yeah.
In this movie, I feel like the cat is sort of the what I would call the reluctant explorer. Like its nature is very flowing and moving forward, that it kind of has to, much like the boat and whatever, but like it really just wants to fucking be home, and it's like sun perch and catching fish and like doing whatever. But the world is changing, and like it could be, I was reading it sometimes as like a story like akin to like growing up. Because you're often, when you're a kid, if hopefully the childhood, you have a loving family with a home and all that jazz, and like you are comfortable enough to just sort of exist, and then the world changes and you're kind of like, oh, I gotta do stuff.
Yeah,
this cat feels like that journey.
That could be akin to like Steven Spielberg's Empire of the Sun.
Yeah. The dog. Very akin to, and it's funny because again, we go back to how we observe these animals. Dogs can be pack animals, either with other dogs or if they're domesticated with their families, with their human families, and they will kind of just go with the flow and like, okay, is all the dogs chasing that cat? Well, I'm going to chase the cat. Oh, it's just the cat here. Oh, well, like I could be friends with the cat. Like the cat's fine. Like, again, I go back to Zoe and Laszlo and I'm like, all Laszlo, the dog, my dog wants to do is be friends with Zoe and play with Zoe. And Zoe's like, get the fuck away from me.
Yeah.
Oh, buddy. Yeah, he's right here. But like this movie takes all those elements and lets you either read it on a purely animal, their world is changing, they're getting through this with the instinct that we understand, or a lot of different ways you can place more human traits and more human experiences onto it. And it just flows. Like, I'm going to keep using that word so much, so easily between one and the other, and it never has to decide. The Kookaburra, who actually I was just reading. Capybara, sorry. Yeah. Every animal on here is voiced by an actual animals.
Okay.
Like there's no actors.
Yeah.
They went to get a capybara sound, but the sound engineer had to travel to a zoo and tickle them. However, they didn't match the personality of what they wanted the capybara to be.
I was about to laugh like Scooby-Doo.
I know, right? So they got a baby camel instead. So it's and I think, it's funny. Sorry, I'm going to go back to the work we're doing on that History of Cats thing. In that episode, I talk back and forth to Zoe, and Zoe will meow, and there's subtitles. And I actually just had a conversation with my audio editor, Mac, who is a genius at this stuff. But there was something that wasn't connecting, and it was something because I don't think he'd actually done this before. Actually, either of us had. I recorded Zoe doing 30 different types of meows.
Yeah.
Happy, sad, messing with her, holding food. I was using everything I had in my arsenal to get different sounds from my cat. I gave him the file, and I didn't say this, but I was like, "Here's a bunch of Zoe sounds. Cut it together to match." Like, I didn't even say this, but there's moments where I'll say something, meow, or you got that right, bud, or oh no, or whatever. I got the cut back. The timing was fine. But the meows didn't feel like they matched the tone of the moment. And I do think that's my fault for not explicitly asking for that. But it got me thinking, especially now with Flow, how using a real animal and getting it to feel correct in your moment, in your animated moment, is kind of a huge fucking task.
Yeah.
And this movie, while watching it, I never questioned it. It felt effortless. It felt like these were just, even though it was a cartoon, essentially, that these animals existed, and everything felt so real. And sorry.
And so with that though, with the sort of the way that the film was sort of comprised together, did it have a kind of transcendent, or did it how did the film affect you as a fable, as a story, as a
it kind of gave me the double-edged sword of hope. And by that I mean, I don't want to get too much into spoilers yet, but we're almost there. But the end of the movie is a bit of it's a victory, but also not because they've done anything but survive, and also it's hurt something else. And it means that it kind of showed me that no matter how much you win, someone else is probably gonna lose. And there's a lot of other things to take from the movie. I don't want to make it sound like it's a bummer ending. I don't really think it is.
Mm-hmm.
But there's, I think, two characters that we spend a decent amount of time with, air quotes, that don't make it for different reasons. Or one, you might say, made it. The stork, which we'll get into that moment, which is gorgeous, but probably the most surreal moment of the entire film.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that the characters, that the animals come together to get through these hardships that this uncaring world is throwing at them, and they make it. It's important to know that A, that's not guaranteed, and B, just because you make it, or just because the world changes and you adapt and you function, doesn't mean that the world wasn't better during that adaptation, and now that it's sort of switched back, that thing that was better off with the new world, now that it's kind of the old world again, has to suffer for it. I don't know. It's beautiful, and I think that's sort of the why I say this sort of double-edged sword of hope. That does hearken to a lot of Buddhism and other sorts of spiritualities. It's been a while since I did the Buddhist episode. I'm trying to remember the three schools. There's one that's specifically not Theravada. God damn it. Email us in onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com. What's the most Buddhist sect that you can tie to the what I'm talking about with the movie flow. It was a lovely reminder that the world is bigger than us. And I know this sounds a little bit negative or scary. The world's bigger than us and doesn't care. So we have to kind of like care. That sounds so basic and bullshit, but like these animals get together and were able to survive, especially in their last perilous thing with a boat in a tree, because even after they're separated, they come together and basically go above and beyond what their general animalistic programming is and do something spectacular. And it's great for them. And they're able to make sure that everyone in their little troop is fine. And I don't know. I do turn a lot to experiences like Journey. You brought up Journey. Journey is a game, if you haven't played it, I believe it came out on PS3. And you play in a world that does slowly get populated with other players playing it, but you can't like join your friend's Journey game. You seamlessly enter and exit the world of other players experiencing the same moments in the game that you are. And all this is a journey to a mountain. And there's spiritual elements in that game. There's sort of like there's religious symbology, and your scarf is magical and has sort of a spiritual power to it, etc. But as you're playing, you run into other players that you cannot communicate with. You can do little jumps to show that you're happy, or you can sort of like do little shakes. There's like symbols that don't really mean anything, to like, it's a Tower of Babel kind of thing. Like you know that they're talking, but you don't know what they're saying. There's no voice chat. And you can help each other. You can help each other through these areas and through difficult times and through awful things happening to your character around it as you all go toward the same journey. And then it's funny, at the end of that experience, spoiler for Journey, not narratively, just experientially, it shows you the names of the players that you met along the way and at what stages you did and like sort of how long. And I had, when I played Journey, what I felt like was almost close to a spiritual experience, kind of like this movie gave me, where I felt like there was connection where language wasn't a thing, and I was working toward a common goal, and this was a symbol of things coming together, etc. And I was like, this is so beautiful. I can't believe I'm like never going to talk to this person. That's crazy. And then in typical video game fashion, this is where my lovely analogy comes crashing down. The player's name was Scar Juice.
Right. Okay.
And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry. I just love the Scar Juice story. My point is, this movie and the journey that these animals take, no pun intended, does have that similar quality of giving that hope of beings that don't fully understand each other can come together to essentially beat the odds and come back from a very uncaring world. And with a tinge of, that might not be best for everyone, but it was best for our main characters in this movie. I don't know. This is a movie that has a lot of reads. I don't like, there's multiple times where the cat in particular goes underwater and is able to swim really well, but then sometimes not. And again, it's this not like, the movie doesn't follow strict rules in that, because it gets a little bit timey-wimey, spiritually, whatever. But you don't care. Like, it all makes sense for the emotional moment that's happening in it. The moment that I'm thinking of is when the cat goes in the water and can't get back to the boat, and then like basically drowns. But then the whale rescues it, maybe. Like, the whale rose at that point, but we don't know if that was just happened to be when the whale rose and the cat got lucky. I was curious, after watching the movie, I want to watch it again. I wanted to see if there were essentially 9 lives of the cat.
Maybe.
I felt like that might be something like where the cat was endangered or in a spot that like whenever, like if there were maybe like 9 sort of like otherworldly spiritual moments that the cat was involved in. Because that would play with that, obviously, superstition. I don't know. This movie, more than anything, this movie is a treasure trove of things to find and read into. I think due to the fact there is no language in it and the relationships are not typical human relationships. Like I go back to Robot Dreams, there's no dialogue in that, but that is, even though you could read things one or two different ways, that is a film that is sort of like really giving you an experience that you can latch onto based around human relationships. This is a movie that I think you could do like 9 different readings of them and they'd all be right. And we haven't even talked yet, honestly, about the visuals of this thing. How did this movie make you feel as someone who works in visual effects and graphic design?
Yeah, it's beautiful, but it's got a sort of very simple, not a simple, but it's got a video game aesthetic. And when I saw, I didn't watch the trailer, but when I saw what the film was, I looked at it, I was like, I don't know about this, man. Feels a little cheap, to be honest with you. But, I think the thing is, what's extraordinary isn't the sort of detail of the visuals, but it's actually how the visuals are deployed, which is that the lighting and the sort of camera work of this film is so extraordinarily cinematic that it doesn't matter what you think of the visuals to begin with. Yeah, it looks a little bit like Journey. It looks a little bit like Stray. Yeah. Looks a little bit like Inside.
I don't think it looks that much like Stray. I think it just has a cat in it.
It has a cat.
Yeah.
But I think the thing that I'm sort of getting at here, in terms of that idea of transcendentalism or like this thing, is that it feels like the movie is speaking to a higher language than most movies speak to. And it seems that I read this one thing the other day that was like, because spoiler alert for us, we actually adopted a cat this week. 2 cats actually. So we have cats. We have cats in the house now. And I was reading, I don't know, some philosophy book about animals, and there was this thing that like cats have a direct relationship to God. Now, again, I'm speaking a lot about religion and God and what have you. I'm not a religious person,
right?
But what I think, the reason why I think the film spoke to me is it had the sort of ecstasy that people describe with religion in relation to an observations about the world. And that's what I look for in movies. And it's very rare that I come across movies that really seem to have its finger on a pulse of something bigger than us without actually having to prescribe it to, religion or what have you.
Well, I think there's something interesting. I think all religions, no matter what they are, everyone that I've learned about or looked into, all pull on similar experiences, emotions, and styles of storytelling to get that, for lack of a better term, to fuel whatever faith they want you to have. I think this movie takes that same language and tells its own story with it that is not tied to a specific religion. But I think that's where the connection sort of feels. There's so much shared human storytelling across religion that is so similar to one another. There's a lot of there's a phrase for that when something like echoes.
Yeah, it goes through different stories.
Yeah, like I don't remember the exact specific name, but I think this film and its structure and the way it is presented and the emotions that it gives you could be, not even could be, I think it is very much intentionally crafted to feel like what is essentially the mythology of a religion. I'm not saying that this is like trying to get you to follow it. I'm saying it's taking the story beats that religions take that are very powerful and innate to the human experience, and then just telling us a story with those.
Yeah, I sort of hearken it to early Renaissance paintings or early forms of painting, where there was this sort of sense that there was the divine within the paint or divine within the work, and obviously they in those stories they were often telling religious stories, but there was a sense that Da Vinci had some sort of connection with God because his artistic work seemed to speak a higher language than what was. And what I think the sort of religious ecstasy that I had during this film was that this reaffirmed for me, again, cinema is a primary language for me, reaffirmed for me why cinema is primary in this way, because it can, particularly in this film, speak to a higher order of language that is not bound by like us having a conversation or what I would read in a book. It speaks to something that only this movie can do, and only because it's a movie it can do. And I think, because it's animals and because we have that sort of anthropomorphization of animals, and we seek, the reason why religious ecstasy happens in my mind is that we ascribe narrative constructs to events that are happening in our world. That's why the flood becomes Noah's flood, and it becomes a great, reckoning with God, as opposed to a natural, event that occurs. I think this film kind of deals in that, and it deals with that on like a very day-to-day level, which is that we're in spoilers now. The other moment that made me gasp was when the cranes seem to have like a convergence of a meeting after the main crane that we have gotten to know has protected the cat and offered the cat some food, and this has ousted the crane from the rest of its society.
Right.
And they do the most horrendous thing I have ever seen in a movie that made me gasp out loud. And I was like, I know I'm in for something here, because the way this moment has made me feel is that the cranes pin down that one crane and break its arm.
Yeah.
And it was like, that is a language.
Or its wing.
Break its wing. That is a language that is so familiar. Like, I understand what is happening. And it's also so alien, because it's so like, these birds have a order and society around them that I didn't understand existed. And it was this transcendent moment, because then that bird becomes the leader. This broken bird who can no longer fly becomes the leader of this troop. And in the one sense, my understanding of physiology goes, yes, the reason why the bird can operate the boat is that the bird has flown in air and understands how, waves work, and understands how like to move according to your environment. And therefore that it has a better understanding. But yes, the bird stands up at the back of the boat and steers the rudder.
Yeah.
And it's like, but at the same time I was like, yes, of course the bird does that. And then at some points the capybara does that. And then, the bird steers the boat through a deserted city, and it's like, and the city is, it seemed like Malaysian ruins, or perhaps from that region of the world.
I don't think this took place on Earth.
I don't know.
I don't think they ever thought about it that way. But like,
to your point earlier, I don't think it's important to prescribe any kind of read that is definitive.
Because the way like the flood works is not a very earthly way.
There was a point where like the logic of the flood didn't make sense to me, but I was like, but then I kind of was like, well, it doesn't matter to me. The reason being is that at one point the flood, is essentially like entirely fills the planet, and like to the point where like they're in 12, 13, 14, 20 feet of water. We have no idea.
Way deeper than that.
Yeah, because there's a whale. And then at some point the flood recedes and they walk back on the land that they once walked by. And I was like, this was underwater for like days, weeks. We have no idea. It would be devastated. And they walk on it as though nothing had happened. And I was
the
like,
earth is ripped apart. Like it is kind of, there's canyons
but there's only one whale, and there's no like remnants of like the deeply, like colorful world that we had seen before. And also, the trees were lush and they could walk upon them as though they would. I
took it as this only took like 2 or 3 days.
Even then, I imagined drowning the entire world for 2 or 3 days.
I bet you a tree would be exactly the same. To be perfectly honest,
but the point is, who cares? Yeah. Like it doesn't matter, because the transcendent quality of the film is that it sort of becomes a bigger order of language, and so there's this sort of troupe that is formed that speaks to like the kind of basic language of movies like this, like Milo and Otis, like two animals on an adventure, or as we mentioned, The Wild Robot or Robot Dreams or whatever we talked about this year, or anytime. There's a documentary, by the way, that I haven't seen, came out a few years ago, called Gunda, about the daily life of a pig.
Shot in
black and white. Yeah. It'd be extraordinary.
Well, like it's funny going back to the crane and sort of the ostracizing of that crane who was protecting the cat. from its own society. You could read that a bunch of different ways. That could be stepping away from your community because you disagree with them about something and then they excommunicate you. It could be like a lot of different things. The ways that the dogs interact. So again, when the lab, who's like the main character dog, is with Cat and the other animals, is very kind of helpful and sweet and big and dumb and wants to play.
Yeah.
But then when it's back with the other dogs, it kind of goes with the other dogs.
Yeah.
It just does whatever the other dogs want. And that feels kind of like when a person kind of pops in and out of social groups and like will put one above the other. Like, I don't know. There's a bunch of different ways you can read all of the different moments. The thing that I'm the most interested in, I think, from a discussion standpoint, and your opinion is, so when about 2/3 through the movie, when the crane with the broken wing ends up going up a set of giant stairs.
Yeah. Some sort of
tower of something.
Yeah.
All the way to the top, and the cat follows it. There is a giant light in the sky, and the crane ascends, and the cat almost does, but that is kind of put back, and the crane is gone, and the cat is left on top of that pyre.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I don't have the full read.
As I watched it, I felt the kind of religious ecstasy. The only thing I would ascribe it to is religious ecstasy of this moment is extraordinary. And I don't know, I've read many ways that I've been on Reddit and there are many theories that have been floated. My thing is like you said, it doesn't matter how you read it. What matters is, do you believe it? And as a story, or do you find that the idea that a transcendent moment like that can occur in this world resonant for you? And for me, it was certainly did. And then it's followed by a moment where the cat almost drowns. As I watched the movie, I'll tell you what my feeling was as I watched the movie, which was that I thought what had happened, I don't know what happened with the bird. It ascended into some sort of higher order or something like that. There's a theory that I read on the internet that was like the bird sacrificed itself in order to have the waters recede. That was an interesting theory. I don't know.
I don't know.
Sure.
Yeah, sure.
And then I felt like, because I didn't understand the physics of the flood receding, that the cat had actually died in the flood when it came down from that tower, and then everything that happened after that was kind of a dream or some sort. But then the dream went on for quite a while and had a lot of details in it. And I was like, I don't really understand what's going on here.
Right.
But it was like that was the way I remember watching the film. And then when I came out of it and I've sat with it for a couple of months and still really firmly am like, to everybody listening to this podcast, this could be one of the greatest movies ever made, was like, it doesn't matter. What mattered is that the film gave me this sense of higher order. And to that end, the beauty of the ending, however you read it, was that at the beginning of the film, the cat was alone when it looked upon its reflection in the world. And at the end of the film, it looked upon its reflection and there were a group of other animals that it was determined to stay with. And that's all that mattered to me. And how we got there, like birds ascending mystical, stairways in the sky, like I sure.
Yeah.
But the reason I think I'm so jazzed about this movie is because of its silence, because of the fact that it is bound by this thing, which is that a dog has to communicate with a cat, and a cat has to communicate with a capybara, and a capybara has to communicate with a lemur, and a lemur has to communicate with a crane, and there's a fish and a whale. And, the sort of religious ecstasy of the movie, I'm again, hopefully if you're listening to this, not prescribing this to me going that this is a religious movie, I'm just sort of suggesting that it kind of has the qualities of the ascendance that I'm sort of thinking about. It has to do with like the deer running in circle around the cat and that fear that comes with that and that sort of dream of that. But then how that is translated when the cat goes underwater and is encircled by fish and now is able to catch them and provide fish for other animals within its tribe. All of that was primordial. It was primal. It was speaking to sort of a sort of base instinct of like how we view the world, and it made sense, and it felt odd to me. It felt so profound to me that a filmmaker, who's making an animated film with all the sort of pratfalls that come with making an animated film, could do that, could speak a bigger language than most. And for that, is the reason why I legitimately was like, this is one of the greatest movies ever made.
Well, also, I think a lot of heavy lifting is done by the score as well. So the score is actually by the director, Gints Zilbalodis, which I will butcher, and Richard Zaloop. Yeah. And it pushes it. Like I with no dialogue, your score kind of has to do a lot of heavy lifting, and it really, really does. It elevates everything you're seeing to the point of sort of extreme emotion around what's happening. What were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say that to the end of what you were sort of talking about there with the score. The other thing about the movie is that we could be coming across as though we're speaking about an experimental film or something that is sort of aloof or difficult to watch. It's not. It's so like and it's very rare for a film to be speaking on this level to an audience that could be 4 years old as well as 90 years old.
I think
that's everything in between, and is eminently within the language of cinema as we understand it today.
That is why I was saying, like, sort of like the knife's edge that it rides is kind of insane.
Yeah.
The level of craft to get that across to literally every kind of audience. I can't picture, this is a fucking bold statement. I can't picture someone watching this movie and not taking something from it.
Again, you speak to my son.
Well, no, but I was going to say, to your son's point, the only thing I can see is if animal endangerment does just make your brain go nope, and then you're not experiencing it anymore. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that could very easily turn off a person to this.
But the film that I was thinking about that we have done on this podcast is 2001: A Space Odyssey, a film that kind of speaks to a higher order of language and a sort of sense of like, what is the universe? How does the universe actually work? And that is a film, as much as I love it and deeply adore it, and you can go back and listen to our episode about it, is one that I think some people find oppressive to watch. It's like a very still movie, which, uses, orchestra sounds that are very, very challenging to actually listen to, and has like a sort of stylization about it that is very, difficult. And that is not this film. Again, this is a film that you could put in front of a 4-year-old, a 3-year-old, a 2-year-old, whatever, and a 95-year-old, and in every person in between is going to have some kind of reaction to this, and it is primal. And I think that's such a rare commodity, or it's not even a commodity. It's such a rare gift to the world, kind of thing. And it's I think the reason why I've been so passionate about talking about it to other people is that, like, it's not a movie that's got in every film theater, right? In every screening right now. It's not a movie that has got a lot of eyeballs on it. It's hard to see. It was only playing in one theater when I went and saw it. And
don't worry, Red One took up a bunch of those, and now it's directly on Prime 2 weeks later.
Red One is?
Yeah.
Cool. So the job of the podcast in some way is to like direct people towards things that like are worth their time and so unique and transcendent like this, that's what I got excited about. I was like, man, there's this thing that everybody should see, and literally everybody should see. There's like no hesitation in anyone seeing this movie. Like I can't imagine anyone I couldn't recommend this movie to, and for those who do love it, for it to enter into the pantheon of like those important experiences. I talked I think a couple of weeks ago about like one of my favorite books is 100 Years of Solitude, the Marquez novel, and it's got an adaptation right now. But that is a movie that there's a book that is transcendent to me, and the only thing I can sort of ascribe to as akin to like a religious experience. And this movie is like that. So I feel like I'm sort of expressing hyperbole as like one of the greatest movies ever made. But I really do feel strongly about that, and I am excited by that. I'm excited by people getting to watch this movie.
I won't even speak in hyperbole. This movie fucking rocks. Like, it's just great. You can find a lot of different stuff in it. The ways that you experience it might be different from other people, or I just feel like there's so many things to take away from it, especially if you bring into it your particular experience. Again, I go back to humans' interactions with animals and how we read what they're doing to mean whatever it is we think they're doing. I'm doing 2/3 of this podcast with a dog on my lap.
Yeah.
That felt appropriate.
Yeah.
So here Laszlo is. You can't see him or hear him because he's much more quiet than
Zoe.
Zoe.
This much I know is true, which is that Zoe would have a difficult time surviving the apocalypse.
Oh yeah.
as would I. And I'm not. I've just met my new cat, my new cats, and I have no idea whether they would save me.
Yeah. No, they won't. No, cats won't save you.
Yeah.
Never wait for a cat to
and that's
save
why
you.
we love them. It's because they wouldn't save us.
Yeah, they have better things to do.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think it's very clear. If you haven't gleaned it already, you should definitely see Flow. I bet you probably have another maybe week or so to find a theater near you to watch it. And then I think this is going to do a lot of work on streaming services. I think I
hope so.
I think this is going to do something that I think a lot more people will be talking about this.
Yeah.
Because it's not like another movie you've seen. Like,
and,
it's
and,
just,
and have we talked about any movie like this year?
It feels very different. No. Yeah. It's a one or two, but this hits all the notes and is also different. So I don't know. I very much loved it. I'll be revisiting it many, many times, and I think you should too, because this has been the only podcast about the film Flow. Shahir, when you are not finding a whale to save you while the flood is knocking down your entire life around you, where can folks find you?
I was trying to think of the Star Trek movie where they travel back in time to find the whales.
It's the Journey Home?
The Journey Home. Yeah, you can find me making the Journey Home on my website, www. I don't need to say that. Suvanova.com, SUVANOVA.com. Matt, when you are surfing the floods, where can people find you?
You can find me with my Journey scarf, running around with my triangle dress and what else we got, and my wolf deer companion. Those are those 3 video games I brought up before: Neva, Grease, and of course Journey. Over my website, extra credits and extra history on the YouTube machines. Please go check them out. By the time this comes out, I believe we will be into ep 2 or 3 of our Potsy conspiracy series, where we're talking about the Potsy, the murder of Giuliano Medici and the plot to throw over the greatest banking family of Florence at the time. It is fucking nuts. Right. It is. They got the Pope to sign off on that hit. It's crazy. Anyway, please go check that out. Also, I think we'll be doing a retrospective on the extra credit side of things. It should be out by the time this comes out. There's a game designer, Richard Garriott, aka Lord British. Mm-hmm. And he is the creator of Ultima Online. Mm-hmm. He's also gone to space. Like, he was one of the first private citizens to go to space, and he's the head of the Explorers Club in New York, or actually it's global, I think. But like, I don't know. This dude lived he's still alive. He lives a crazy life, and it's super interesting to look at. Like, we're doing a series called Designers You Should Know.
Okay.
And it's very, very interesting. His life is just phenomenal. He basically invented the MMO. But anyway, all of that is to say, you should email us in, tell us what you thought of Flow, or if you're having trouble finding Flow, even let us know that. onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com. Also, if you'd like to buy us a coffee, you can buy us a coffee at buymeacoffee /onlymoviepodcast. You tweeted us. I'm at Matthew Kroll at nebula.tv at Blue Sky. You hear you're Sheer Dowd at bluesky.social.
Yeah,
B-Sky.
I guess so.
Yeah. Yeah, find us on all the things. Next week, we got to go fast.
You want to go really fast?
We got to go really fast.
Is Keanu Reeves going to be there?
I believe so. I wasn't terribly excited to go see Sonic 3 until friend of the show, Siddhanta Dlanka, posted a review on Inverse and dropped this movie, said you could literally mention it in the same breath as recent animated works like Flo and the Wild Robot, fun and touching action dramas that could become classics in times and wouldn't feel out of place. I trust Siddhant a lot.
Yeah.
I don't believe him, but I want to, and I really I want to see if we can get him on the show for that, because I think I don't know, I'm fascinated. Especially I don't believe he liked the first two. And I did you see the Sonic movies?
I saw them, but I saw them more in the context of taking my son to a movie.
Sure.
So they were often, I was just like watching his reaction.
I held off on Sonic 1 for a very long time, and then by the time I watched it, I loved it. I thought it was just such a fun, silly movie. And Sonic 2 was fine. But to have this movie be talked about that way makes me far more interested in seeing it than I was. So yeah, I would like to do that next week.
Okay. Siddhant also hosted a screening of The Nickel Boys recently, which was a film that we should be talking about at some point. It'll inevitably come up in the best of years. We, done the math. We've only done 30 movies so far this year since our last top 10. We got at least 20 movies to go before we do our top 10 of the year. But here's a fun fact. We are coming up to our 10-year anniversary. In May, I believe, of 2025 will be 10 years since we started.
How many milestones do we have to hit?
We have to hit all of them. And so one thing I would love to do at some point when it'll either be this year or next year.
It's the Cornetto trilogy. It's our last hanging request.
Well, there is the Cornetto trilogy until we get another request that will supersede it. But I would love to do the top 10 of the top 10s, which is take the best of the 10 top 10s that we've done and start ranking those. Because what is time if not a flat circle?
What a masturbatory exercise that would be.
I think it'd be interesting to look back at the last decade and wonder how films from 2015 held up in our conversations.
It could be interesting. We'll talk it. We'll figure out a format.
Yeah.
Anyway, we got time. Until we don't.
Have time.
All right.
Until the flood takes us.
God, the Halo flood, the villains from that game? No. Those are spooky. Anyway, we'll talk to you next week.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.